this is what we're finding out now. I mean, this was the big theme of the Twitter files was, when we tried to figure out where.
So what are the Twitter? Can you explain for people who didn't follow it at the time?
So in late 2022, after Elon Musk acquired Twitter, there started to be rumors that he was going to open up the internal communications of old Twitter and sort of give them to the world, right? And it turned out to be true. I got a call one day, or I got a note sort of summoning me to San Francisco. And
From whom?
From somebody at Twitter, let's put it that way. And so I was the first person who was put on this project of rummaging through old Twitter's, correspondence. And I think he said that Elon said that his idea was that he wanted to restore trust in the platform by telling people about the different kinds of censorship techniques that were going on. It's not clear exactly what he was up to, but he seemed sincere at the time. He brought in me. He brought in Barry Weiss. Barry brought in a couple of other people like Michael Schellenberger. Li Fang ended up being involved, another reporter, really good young investigative reporter, maybe the last one, right?
Probably.
He appeared. And so there was a group of us. And for about 3 months, we got to look through the internal correspondence of one of the world's biggest communications companies. And the big thing that we found was that there was this nexus of communication between government enforcement and intelligence agencies and the internet platforms. And they had a very sophisticated, organized bureaucracy that was involved with controlling content in a variety of different ways. And when we started to try to figure out, first of all, this was shocking to us. Seeing all these documents that said flagged by FBI, flagged by DHS.
Just to be clear, that's a crime. They're committing a crime by doing that. That's illegal.
Probably.
Under the Bill of Rights. I mean, it's just really couldn't be clearer.
Yeah, you would think, right? I'm not a lawyer, but it looked bad to me, right? Certainly, it looked like a story.
Yeah.
No question, right? But we had to figure out, where did this come from? Like, how did this start? And when we started asking questions, it turned out that a lot of the programs that were now targeting domestic speech began as overseas counterterrorism sort of messaging programs, right? So the State Department, for instance, has a thing called the Global Engagement Center, which is now very much interested in speech both abroad and at home. But they were once exclusively a sort of counter-ISIS platform. In fact, they had a different name back then. They were called the CSCC. But in 2016, Obama rechristened them the Global Engagement Center, and they started to look inward. And when I asked people who I managed to talk to a couple of sources who worked at that agency, one phrase really stuck out. It was CT to CP. So that's counterterrorism to counterpopulism. And the idea was the whole mission abroad of countering ISIS or Al-Qaeda, contracting wise, it was kind of drying up, right? Because those threats had been somewhat neutralized. But populism, was now it was viewed as a very serious threat after Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, the Arab Spring was something that maybe they didn't see as a bad thing, but they certainly saw the transformative power of the internet platforms. I think that freaked them out.
And the virus is communicable.
Exactly. Then there was Brexit. Then I think Trump was the last stand for a lot of these folks. And that's when you started to see all these communications like, we need to get a more formalized, control over these platforms. And so, that's when the War on Terror mission turned inward. And I think that's a huge story, right?
It's the end of the country we grew up in.
Right? Yeah. You would think, and that's, for me, it's been and I think probably for you too, this new theme of this sudden explosion of illiberal tactics in politics, that even if they're directed at somebody that, liberals hate, like Donald Trump or Steve Bannon, how can you not be freaked out by stuff like that? We haven't used contempt of Congress to jail people since the Un-American Affairs Committee in 1947, right? This is like third world kind of stuff that we're seeing. Accusing the front runner in a presidential campaign of 100 different felonies. Is that happening if he's not running for president? I mean, who can honestly say that, right? But you can't talk about it now. I mean, if you mention it, you're out of the club in mainstream press now, which is incredible to me.
You may have come to the obvious conclusion that the real debate is not between Republican and Democrat or socialist and capitalist, right and left. The real battle is between people who are lying on purpose and people who are trying to tell you the truth. It's between good and evil. It's between honesty and falsehood. And we hope we are on the former side. That's why we created this network, the Tucker Carlson Network. And we invite you to subscribe to it. Go to tuckercarlson.com/podcast. Our entire archive is there. A lot of behind the scenes footage of what actually happens in this barn when only an iPhone is running. tuckercarlson.com/podcast. You will not regret it. So, I mean, it raises so many questions, but most obviously then, if uncovering the abuse of power by the powerful, and particularly by government, isn't the point of journalism, it's clearly not the point of journalism anymore. What is the point?
Well, I mean, then you become courtiers, right? I mean, I think that's, again, what's ironic for me is that, this is, I saw this process happening full circle. When I first got to Russia, the first reporters I met had worked at places like Komsomolskaya Pravda in the 80s, right?
Yes.
Which were, at one time, it was the world's largest newspaper. It had a circulation of 21 million or something like that. And, I worked in the old Pravda building when I was at the Moscow Times. And the people there, they would tell me stories about what their jobs were in the 80s. And there was like taking dictation. They were clerks, basically, right?
Yes.
They would get whatever the message of the day was, and they would do it and then go home to their wives, and they would go fishing on the weekends. And there was no, intellectual anything involved with it. You couldn't take it in that direction. It would be hazardous to your health if you did. Well, that's what journalism is now in America. I mean, look what just happened with the Nord Stream thing. Just to take an example, right? Nord Stream happens, and there's no investigation whatsoever in any of the major newspapers. How can that happen? It's this major consequential thing that might have an impact on starting a war with a nuclear power.
Oh, it just wrecked the economy of Western Europe.
And it's a major ecological disaster, which you claim to care about.
It's the largest man-made emission of CO2 in history. Right. So, and if you think CO2 is driving the greatest threat that we face, the existential threat of climate change, then you kind of want to know how that happened.
Right? Wouldn't you?
Right.
You would think,
So why wouldn't, I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because, I was like the only person in mainstream news to point out that no, Russia did not blow up Nord Stream and was attacked for it. But I was wondering, if I'm at the New York Times, like a lot of people I know, why wouldn't I just try to report that story out? It's so interesting.
Right.
Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, obviously you're getting a signal from down on high that, that's not wanted. But it's different. Okay. So in the early 2000s, yes, there were high profile instances where people like Jesse Ventura were unhired from MSNBC because they mistakenly thought he was pro-war when they hired him.
Yes.
Right. Phil Donahue's getting good ratings, but he's bounced, right?
I was there for that. Yes.
Chris Hedges,
Yes, I know.
And Chris was sort of a classic example of a phenomenon that Noam Chomsky once wrote about in Manufacturing Consent, which is that they don't fire you necessarily, but you just don't get promoted if you're considered the wrong kind of personality, which is weird because good investigative reporters should be difficult personalities, right?
Yes.
If they're not, they're probably not good reporters.
Yes.
You know, I mean, just look at who our great reporters are.
They're independent-minded people.
Independent-minded people, and you know, you want to experience them in little bursts.
Yeah, I
for
agree.
the most part.
I
Right?
agree with that.
Yeah. But
They're all kind of crazy, to be honest. Yeah,
but that's okay,
it's part of the job.
right? But this is different. Like there were a few instances like that back then, of people who are critics of the war, whatever. Now it's just this blanket. If you step out of line on any one of 24 different topics, you're out, you know? And I think everybody's gotten that message. And that's the only thing that makes sense to me is like, what?
But so there are no brave people in all of journalism? There are no honest men left?
Well, how can that, I mean, that it can't be possible, but it kind of is, right? I mean, there are a few people who I think tried to do a few things, you know,